Je donne maintenant la parole au représentant du Pakistan qui va faire une déclaration.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, since this is the first occasion I have to speak in the third committee, may I first congratulate you on your election as chairman of the committee. I have very fond memories of your country as a former ambassador to your capital. Mr. Chairman, I have the privilege to introduce, on behalf of the Pakistan delegation and the co-sponsors, the draft resolution entitled Universal Realization of the Right of Peoples to Self-Determination. This is contained in document AC3 74/L61. Mr. Chairman, one of the central purposes and principles of the United Nations Charter is, and I quote, to develop friendly relations among nations based on respect for the principles of equal rights and self-determination of peoples, unquote. Article 2, common to both the International Conventions on Political and Economic and Social Rights, upholds the right to self-determination as a fundamental basis for the promotion of the objectives of both conventions. The incorporation of the right to self-determination in the Declaration of Principles of International Law covering friendly relations and cooperation among states, adopted in 1970 by the General Assembly, crystallized the status of the right of self-determination as customary international law. The right of self-determination was also the central principle in the Declaration on the Granting of Independence to Colonial Countries and Peoples, embodied in General Assembly Resolution 1514 of the 25th session of this Assembly. The UN Resolution 1514 stipulates that the subjection of peoples to alien subjugation, domination, and exploitation constitutes a denial of fundamental human rights, is contrary to the Charter of the United Nations, and is an impediment to the promotion of world peace and cooperation. Mr. Chairman, the resolutions of the United Nations and international practice have established the scope of the right to self-determination and the methods and modalities for its realization. The erga omnes nature of the right to self-determination was conferred by the International Court of Justice, inter alia, in the Namibia and East Timor cases. The scope and conduct of the right to self-determination has been further elaborated by the Human Rights Committee, the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, and numerous prominent jurists. Peoples who have been promised the free exercise of a decision on their own political future are obviously entitled to the right to self-determination. Resolution 2649 of 1970 considers that the acquisition and retention of territory in contravention of the right of peoples of that territory to self-determination is inadmissible and a gross violation of the Charter. Certainly, attempts to unilaterally change the status of the territory which has yet to exercise the right to self-determination is illegal. This has been reaffirmed in several resolutions of the Security Council. Thus, Resolution 1514 states that, and I quote, all armed action or repressive measures of all kinds directed against dependent peoples shall cease in order to enable them to exercise peacefully and freely their right to complete independence." Unquote. Curfews and blackouts and lockdown of civilian population to suppress their ability to express their demand for freedom and self-determination is obviously a gross violation of human rights, including the right to self-determination. Likewise, several resolutions of the General Assembly and the Security Council have categorically declared that attempts to unilaterally change the status of an occupied territory, legally or demographically, whose people have yet to exercise their right to self-determination, are ipso facto null and void. The modalities for the exercise of the right to self-determination is well established. Almost all former colonies and subjugated peoples were, I quote, granted, unquote, freedom and independence in the decades after the Second World War by legal acts of the colonial powers. Often, this peaceful exercise of the right to self-determination has been through a free and fair referendum or a plebiscite conducted under the auspices of the United Nations, such as in East Timor and Namibia. While most dependent or occupied peoples have been able to exercise their right to self-determination peacefully, there are some who have been denied this right and have been obliged to struggle for it. Operative paragraph 1 of General Assembly Resolution 2649 of 1970, I quote, affirms the legitimacy of the struggle of peoples under colonial and alien domination, recognized as entitled to the right of self-determination to restore to themselves that right by any means at their disposal, unquote. In operative paragraph 2, the resolution, and I quote again, recognizes the right of peoples under colonial and alien domination in the legitimate exercise of their right to self-determination to seek and receive all kinds of moral and material assistance in accordance with the resolutions of the United Nations and the spirit of the Charter of the United Nations, unquote. Mr. Chairman, next year will mark the 60th anniversary of the Declaration on Decolonization, General Assembly Resolution 1514, and the 50th anniversary of General Assembly Resolutions 2625 and 2649. The draft resolution presented to the committee today seeks to reaffirm the cardinal principle of self-determination as elaborated in these landmark resolutions, whose provisions are equally applicable in contemporary situations of denial of freedom and self-determination by foreign occupation, alien domination, illegal annexation, and military intervention. Mr. Chairman, recent history attests that the suppression of the right of peoples to self-determination has been trampled, and wherever it has been trampled and violated, it inevitably results in violence and conflict. Secondly, in recent times, such suppression is often been justified by portraying struggles for self-determination and freedom as, quote, terrorism, unquote. This canard, propagated by aggressors and occupiers, is being progressively exposed. Mr. Chairman, due to the universal character of this right and its continued applicability in situations of foreign occupation and intervention, this resolution on the universal realization of the right of peoples to self-determination has been traditionally adopted by consensus in the General Assembly. We hope that this year, too, this committee and the Assembly will reaffirm the global commitment to the principle of self-determination by adopting this resolution by consensus. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the wide numbers of cross-regional co-sponsors who have joined us and supported this important resolution. We would also like to take this opportunity to urge all other members who have not done so to co-sponsor and support this draft resolution before adoption. I thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Je remercie Monsieur l'ambassadeur du Pakistan pour son introduction du projet de résolution et je lui souhaite la bienvenue dans notre troisième commission et plus généralement à New York et au sein des Nations Unies.